Real men don't need painkillers, my father declared, tossing my prescription bottle into the hospital trash can. I watched helplessly from my bed, still groggy from surgery, as the medication I desperately needed disappeared. "Dad, please," I whispered, my throat raw from the breathing tube they'd just removed. "The doctor said I'll need them. The pain. Pain builds character, Marcus." He cut me off, his voice sharp with disapproval. "I raised you better than this. When I had my appendix out at your age, I didn't take a single pill. You're 25, not some weak kid. My name is Marcus Chen, and I'd just undergone major spinal surgery after a construction accident at work. 3 fractured vertebrae, 6 hours of surgery, and a recovery journey that was supposed to be managed with carefully prescribed pain medication. But my father had other ideas about what made a man. The nurses said I need to stay ahead of the pain. I tried reasoning with him. It's part of the recovery protocol." He scoffed, straightening his tie like he always did when he was about to deliver one of his lectures. "Protocol is for weak people. You think your grandfather had protocols when he built our family business? You think I got where I am by following someone else's rules about pain?" I wanted to point out that running a successful real estate company wasn't quite the same as recovering from spinal surgery, but the throbbing in my back was getting worse, making it hard to focus. The local anesthesia from surgery was wearing off, and without the prescribed medication, I knew the pain would soon become unbearable. "Mr. Chen," Nurse Sandra appeared in the doorway, her experienced eyes taking in the scene. "It's time for Marcus's first dose of pain medication. He won't be needing it," my father announced proudly. "We Chens handle pain the natural way." I saw concern flash across Sandra's face. "Sir, post-operative pain management is crucial for proper healing. The medication isn't just for comfort. It's part of the recovery process." "I know what's best for my son," he insisted. "No son of mine will become dependent on pills." Sandra tried to catch my eye, but I looked away, ashamed. At 25, I still couldn't stand up to my father. Even knowing the agony that awaited me, I remained silent as he dismissed her concerns. That night was the longest of my life. As the hospital grew quiet and the surgical anesthesia fully wore off, waves of pain began crashing through my body. Each breath felt like fire along my spine. The simple act of shifting slightly in bed became an exercise in torture. Around midnight, I pressed the call button, hoping maybe a different nurse would help. Instead, my father appeared, having insisted on staying overnight. "Fighting through it like a man, son?" he asked, mistaking my grimace for what he probably thought was stoic determination. I couldn't answer. The pain had become a living thing, clawing at my insides. Sweat soaked my hospital gown, and my hands trembled as they gripped the sheets. "This is how you build real strength," he continued, pulling out his phone to show me something. "Look at this article about athletes who never use painkillers. This is what excellence looks like." I wasn't looking at his phone. I was looking at the clock, counting seconds, then minutes, trying to focus on anything but the inferno in my spine. The doctors had warned that unmanaged post-operative pain could lead to complications, could even slow healing, but my father's voice drowned out those memories. "Remember when you were 10 and broke your arm?" he was saying. "Didn't take anything then either, and look how well that turned out." I did remember. I remembered crying in my room at night, remembered my mother secretly giving me children's Tylenol when he wasn't looking. She wasn't here now, though. She'd stopped fighting his tough love approach years ago. What my father didn't know was that the hospital security cameras were recording everything. Every grimace of pain, every trembling attempt to find a comfortable position, every moment he spent lecturing instead of helping. The night shift nurses were documenting everything too, building a record that would soon change everything. As dawn approached, I lay there, tears silently tracking down my face, wondering how much longer I could endure. The pain had become a universe unto itself, and somewhere in that universe, a frightened 25-year-old was learning that sometimes the worst injuries aren't the ones that show up on X-rays. By morning, I was in crisis. The pain had evolved into something monstrous, sending shockwaves through my entire body. Every breath was a battle, every tiny movement an exercise in agony. The morning shift nurses found me in a state of near delirium, my vital signs dangerously elevated. "This is unacceptable," I heard Dr. Rivera say as she rushed into my room. My father, who had stepped out for coffee, returned to find a team of medical professionals surrounding my bed. "What's going on?" he demanded, still clutching his premium roast coffee. "He's fine. He's handling it like a Chen." Dr. Rivera turned to him, her expression stern. Mr. Chen, your son is experiencing severe post-operative complications due to unmanaged pain. His blood pressure is dangerously high, and he's showing signs of shock. This isn't about being tough. This is about basic medical care. Now listen here, my father started, but Dr. Rivera cut him off. No, you listen. I've reviewed the overnight reports and security footage. What happened here isn't just medically unsound. It borders on abuse. We have protocols for a reason. She nodded to one of the nurses, who began administering pain medication through my IV. The relief wasn't immediate, but knowing help was coming made tears well up in my eyes. Crying now? My father scoffed. I knew the pills would make you soft. Mr. Chen, Dr. Rivera's voice was steel. Please step into my office. There's something you need to see. I watched through half-closed eyes as they led my father away. The medication was finally starting to take effect, dulling the sharp edges of the pain that had consumed me for the past 12 hours. In Dr. Rivera's office, they showed my father the security footage, every moment of my suffering captured in high-definition detail. The timestamp showed the progression, how my condition deteriorated hour by hour without proper pain management. The nurse's notes documented my rising blood pressure, my racing heart rate, the danger signs my father had dismissed as weakness. This is what untreated post-operative pain looks like, Dr. Rivera explained. Your son wasn't building character last night. He was fighting for his body not to go into shock. Pain this severe can slow healing, increase the risk of complications, and cause long-term trauma. They showed him studies, medical journals, evidence of how proper pain management speeds recovery and prevents complications. But it was the footage that finally broke through. Watching his son suffer, hour after hour, stripped away the tough guy facade he'd maintained for so long. When he returned to my room, his face had lost its stern expression. He looked older somehow, deflated. The coffee cup was gone, his hands empty and uncertain. Marcus, he started, then stopped. For the first time in my life, my father seemed at a loss for words. The doctors have recommended a pain management specialist consult, one of the nurses informed me, checking my vitals again. We're adjusting your medication schedule to get you back on track. My father sank into the chair beside my bed, the same chair where he'd spent the night lecturing me about toughness while I silently begged for relief. I thought, he began again, his voice rough. I thought I was helping you be strong, like my father taught me, like his father taught him. Strong doesn't have to mean suffering, Dad, I managed to say, my voice clearer now that the pain was becoming manageable. He nodded, staring at his hands. The footage? I didn't realize. You were. I should have. It was strange seeing him struggle for words. My father, the successful businessman who always had an answer for everything, was finally facing something his usual platitudes couldn't fix. Mr. Chen, a nurse appeared with forms to sign. We need your agreement for the new pain management protocol. He signed without argument, without a single comment about building character or natural healing. When he finished, he remained staring at the papers, as if seeing them, really seeing them, for the first time. The doctor says this will help you heal faster, he said quietly, almost to himself. All this time, I thought, he trailed off, shaking his head. The medication was making me drowsy, but for the first time since surgery, it was a peaceful kind of fatigue, not the desperate exhaustion of fighting constant pain. The last thing I saw before drifting off was my father still sitting there, watching me with an expression I'd never seen before. A mixture of regret, understanding, and something that looked surprisingly like fear. Fear of what he'd almost done in the name of making me strong. The next few days brought changes I never expected. My father, the man who'd spent my entire life preaching about toughness and endurance, transformed into someone almost unrecognizable. He monitored my pain medication schedule with the same attention he usually reserved for business deals, questioning the nurses about dosages and timing. Are you sure he's getting enough? I heard him ask Dr. Rivera during rounds. He grimaced when he moved earlier. The irony wasn't lost on anyone, least of all the nursing staff who had witnessed his complete reversal. But beneath their professional demeanor, I could see their approval of his change of heart. One afternoon, about a week into my recovery, my father arrived looking unusually subdued. He carried a worn leather journal I'd never seen before. I found this while cleaning out some old boxes, he said, settling into what had become his regular chair. It was my father's, your grandfather's. He opened the journal, its pages yellowed with age. He wrote about his own father, your great-grandfather, about how he'd break his fingers back into place without painkillers after accidents at the construction site, how he'd wrap them in newspaper and keep working. My father's voice grew quiet. I always thought those were stories of strength. Now I realize they were stories of unnecessary suffering. He showed me entries describing generations of Chen men, each enduring pain as a badge of honor, each forcing their sons to do the same. The legacy of suffering passed down like a family heirloom. When I saw that security footage, he continued, when I watched you fighting through that pain, I saw myself at your age, trying to prove something to my father. And I saw him, trying to prove something to his father. We've been passing down trauma disguised as tradition. The medication had made me more comfortable, but his words hit harder than any physical pain. Dad? No, let me finish, he said, closing the journal. Yesterday I spoke with a therapist. First time in my life. She helped me understand something. Strength isn't about how much pain you can endure. It's about knowing when to accept help. Coming from my father, this admission was seismic. This was a man who'd once fired an employee for taking sick leave during pneumonia. The physical therapist arrived then, ready for my daily session. These sessions were crucial for recovery, but they were also painful, even with proper medication. Previously, my father would leave during therapy, uncomfortable with any display of vulnerability. This time, he stayed. When I couldn't hold back a groan during a particularly challenging stretch, he didn't lecture about toughness. Instead, he held my hand, something he hadn't done since I was a small child. It's okay to say when it hurts, he said softly. That's not weakness. That's wisdom. 2 weeks after surgery, during my discharge planning, Dr. Rivera presented my father with something unexpected, a USB drive containing the security footage from that first night. Usually we delete these after review, she explained, but I thought you might want to keep this, as a reminder. My father stared at the small drive like it contained nuclear codes. I don't think I'll forget, he said quietly. But yes, I'll keep it. Maybe it can help break the cycle. The day I was discharged, my father had transformed his home office into a recovery room for me, complete with a hospital-grade adjustable bed and a medication schedule posted prominently on the wall. The man who once scorned following someone else's rules about pain now insisted on setting alarms for each dose. Your grandfather would probably call me soft, he remarked as he helped me settle in, but maybe it's time for the Chen men to learn a new kind of strength. That evening, as I watched him carefully measuring out my medication, I realized something profound had shifted. The security cameras had captured more than just my physical suffering. They'd recorded the moment a generational cycle of toxic masculinity began to break. You know, Dad, I said, accepting the pills he offered, maybe real strength is being brave enough to change. He smiled, and for the first time in my life, I saw no judgment in his eyes, no expectation of stoic endurance. Just understanding, acceptance, and love. Maybe you're right, son, he replied. Maybe you're right. The pain is still there, a daily reminder of my injury. But now it's managed, not glorified. And in its place, something new has grown, a healthier relationship with my father, built on compassion rather than competition. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is admit when you need help. It took a security camera to teach my father that lesson, but some lessons, no matter how late they come, are worth the wait.